Well, first of all, as I said off camera, I've been a fan of yours for a really long time. I'm very happy to finally get to talk to you.
Thank you.
Listen, I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
What is it like obviously you had ideas for actors for this movie. What is it like handing the script to them and knowing that if they like it, they're going to, maybe they're going to do it? Like,
right.
What are you sleeping the night before?
Yeah, I mean, I've done this a while, and so I've experienced that moment often. I think there's a read and there's a conversation. Usually is what happens, and so what you have to hope is that the experience of the read makes them want to do it, and then they want to get on the phone or meet in person and make sure you're not crazy. I also want to have, do that check, a normalcy check on some level, because I don't believe that we have to suffer to make great art, and I just want to do my best work and get home to my family, and so I want to make sure that people's priorities are in the right place. So, but certainly there have been moments in my career where, landing an actor can be the difference between the project going and not going, and there's some stress involved in that, but it's not a hardship.
One of the things I thought was really cool about the film is the way you use the aspect ratio to sort of inform the audience in the mental state.
Yeah.
Was that something that you had to, because it's an unusual thing to be able to pull off. Was it something you had to fight for, or did the studio go along with it right at the get-go?
No, they were excited. In the first meeting I had with the executives at Fox Searchlight, it occurred to me as we were talking, in how do you make something subjective where you go on this journey with her, you don't sit back and judge her for the choices that she makes. It occurred to me that could be a technique that we used, and they responded to it right away. I think they liked the idea. I think they came to me with this project because I experiment and because I take creative risks, visually. So, I think that they were excited that I was excited.
Sure.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that hospital shot where she's sort of floating.
Right.
I don't want to say why.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that shot, and talk a little bit about filming it?
Well, yeah, we referred to it as a kind of infinite zoom. I was trying to design in this film the whole way through a subjective experience. And she gets this news that her grandmother has had a stroke, who's raised her, and she goes to the hospital to see her. And who among us in a moment of crisis can really remember getting from one place to another, right? You go into this crisis mode, and I think that I wanted to represent that with her, which is, she's lost in thought, and she's not paying any attention to what's happening around her. And it had to be an emotional moment as well, which is why we used the song and the music in that spot to create an experience for the audience where it's not literal, but it's magical.
Sure. I'm always curious about the editing room, because it's the final rewrite. It's where everything comes together. So how long was your first cut compared to the finished film?
It wasn't that much longer. I think it was about maybe 10 minutes longer.
Okay. Sure.
So yeah, it wasn't bad. And I'm an ensemble storyteller, and I would say what those 10 minutes ended up being were point of view shifts that ultimately in the movie was not where the audience wanted to be. So so really it changed a lot, but the length of it didn't really change that dramatically.
Sure. Who was in your first friends and family screening that that you trusted for honest feedback, and were they honest with you?
Yes. I hope so. I showed my wife first. We had a lot of conversations before I made this movie about why do I want to make this movie, and I think I was able to articulate my point of view on that pretty well. But the best argument for why I wanted to make it was the movie itself, and I think at the end of it, she understood very clearly why I wanted to make this movie. And it was very helpful in helping me from an objective place really understand the impact that the story was having.
Sure. There are, if I'm not mistaken, there are 3 distinct color patterns in the film, or am I wrong about this?
I don't know. Tell me what you got.
Oh no, I was.
Oh, okay.
You designed this very specifically. You had a real vision for this thing.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about in the pre-production, that kind of thing where you're thinking about the color design, you're thinking about all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it, again, it's color is emotion and music is emotion, and there's a metaphor of transformation obviously throughout this whole film, and so the question is visually how are you creating that experience for the audience? There's a butterfly metaphor here, obviously, but what you learn when you read about how a caterpillar turns into a butterfly is that it's a very violent process, and the caterpillar liquefies, literally destroys itself in order to become this beautiful thing, which became more of a metaphor for the journey. I also knew that as the story, at a certain point, the story was going to darken as her psychological decline took place. And I thought, well, I don't want the movie to get dark. And the butterfly allowed me to say there's a moment in the film where she's left her husband and she hasn't brought any clothes with her, and she goes through her grandmother's stuff and she finds this very colorful wardrobe. As she's transforming, the movie gets brighter as the subject gets darker. And there's another production design metaphor of her husband, stripping wallpaper from the walls, and it's a very, striped and stayed pattern, and underneath it are all these flowers, this idea of what's underneath the surface of someone. It was about that sense of stripping back the exterior to get to who Natalie's character really was.
I know I'm going to run out of time with you. Actually, one last question.
Yeah.
What was, before filming began, no matter how much, you never have enough time, you never have enough money, no matter what movie you're making. What was the thing you were really nervous about being able to pull off with the limitations you had?
Well, so it's a movie that has a space sequence and it has an underwater training sequence, right? And if you think about what it takes to pull those things off, in a 35-day schedule, probably 14 to 18 of those days were those sequences, which are about 15 minutes of the movie. So that means you have about 20 days to make the whole movie on top of that. So
I should mention for people that are watching, that's insane.
Yes.
That's a very ambitious schedule.
Yeah, and I come from Fargo and from television, so the days are always impossible, but we do them anyway. But I had certainly hoped in moving to features that I would have a more realistic schedule, where it's like we're shooting 3 pages a day, and that's not how it ended up. But I signed up for it, so it's nobody's fault but my own. But that was the challenge of it, was to make sure that we had enough time to tell the story and not just blow all the time on the eye candy.
Completely. I love Fargo. I have to bring that up with you.
Yes.
I believe when do you start filming the 4th season? Is it filming?
No, we start on October 15th.
And is that the kind of show where you have most of the scripts done? Or how does that, because I've heard like with Game of Thrones, they had all 10 scripts.
Yes.
With Fargo, how much are the scripts done before filming begins, and how much is it sort of like you have the whole thing really figured out, but we only have like 5 scripts?
The latter. It depends year to year. The first year I had 8 out of 10. The second year I had probably 6 out of 10. This year I'm in the 5 range. Some of it is just one thing to another thing to another thing. And then I took a vacation because I think I deserved a vacation.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, and then I came back and I'm directing the first block, so in a perfect world I would be writing scripts, but instead I'm prepping the show. But we mapped everything out. I know the journey, and the writing process for me is not a belabored, lengthy one, so I'm not worried about it yet.
I understand. I already have to go, but is there anything you can tease about the season?
Well, the cast is incredible, and I would say it's at least twice the size of any other story that we've told, both financially and just the scope of it and the scale of it and the period of it. It's there's no reason to do this again unless I think it can be the best one yet, and I think that.
I cannot wait to see it. Congrats on everything.
Thank you.
Pleasure to finally meet you.
Yes.
Seriously.